Hey everyone, welcome to another video by Python Pool. In this video, we'll be seeing a simple Python program to create a paint tab using Tk GUI. So let me show you the demo program. Our demo program would be something like this. In this we could write anything just as you want. We could change the color, brush color, we could change to anything as you want. We can also change the background color. Let me just set it to black. You see that we could also increase the pen width. So that's our simple Python simple paint tab we'll be designing today. So let me code one file. Let me name it as test.py, and we'll be using Tkinter module. So let me import those modules. Import Tkinter as tk. Let me import from Tkinter import star, and let me import some of the more modules from Tkinter. So let me import ttk for a slider, and let me import color chooser. So it's basic module to choose the colors. After importing, let me create our main program. So if we'll be creating a class today, and we'll be seeing the function with the self arguments today. So our driver program would be something like this. If name equals to underscore main underscore 2 times, and if this is create the interpreter instance and root variable, that is tk. After that call this main and pass the root there, and set the root title. Let me set it to anything, PyPaint, and after that let me terminate this instance. Okay, so let's create our class right away. Let me create that. Let me name it as main, and after that we'll create some of the functions. Like first of all, we'll create the initial function, that is underscore init, and what it will have the self and the master would be containing this root file. Okay, so what we will define in this function, we'll define the basic types, basic variables we want in our program. Let me first define the master. Self.master should be equals to master. Okay, and let me define color foreground, that is brush color. Let me define that. Let me set it as white or black. Black. Let me set it as black. And of course the background color too. Let me define that. Color background, let me get it as color underscore vg. Let me set it as white. So initially our canvas would be white and our text brush color would be black. And of course we don't want any text, so let me take a variable old x and let me set it to none. So initially there should not be any style, and of course with the y same. Copy that, paste it here, and replace this with y. Okay, after that we want pen width. So of course self pen width, let me set it as initially 5, and we'll be calling our function for creating the widgets. Let me define the function later and call it here, create widgets, create widgets, call it here. Okay, and let me bind the canvas. So we'll be defining this c variable in the create widget function. So let me bind this with a button. It is a property of bind function, b1 motion, and motion should call this paint variable. So that's how we'll define the design. We'll able to draw something. So we'll be defining this paint function right away, and we also want to bind one more button, that is Control C. Let me paste it here, Control V. This should be button release. So when the press, it should be in motion, and when the release, so button release 1, and this should be in the angular brackets. Sorry, I forgot that one, to end that here. Let me end that here. Button release, and these ports should be outside this angular bracket. I'm sorry for this confusion. First goes then angular bracket. First goes then angular brackets, and first angular brackets, and then quotes. Okay, and we'll change this command. We'll change it to reset. So after when reset is pressed, all the backgrounds and paints would be erased, and our program, our window should be set as default. So that's it in initial function. Let me define this paint function. Let me define this paint function here, and what it will do, it will take a self variable, of course, and an event. So what should happen on the window is known as event. So it will take these two, and after that, if self dot old x and self dot old y, if they are changing, if the event is changing these two, what should we do? What should we do? We need to create, so self dot c would contain canvas. I will define it in this create widget function. So let me now use it here. So self dot c dot create, and create what? Create a line to where self dot old x, and we also want self dot old y, and after that, what we want event dot x, so in which x coordinate event is changing, and event dot y to event dot y, and also want pen width. So we need to change the widths. We want everything that is changing in our window and that is creating an event. So self dot pen width, it is also changing. Okay, should change. Okay, and if the color, if it wants to change the color, so fill should be equals to self dot color foreground. Okay, and then cap style should be round. Cap style should be set as round, and after that, smooth should be true. So everything should be smoothly designed. Let me set it to true. And after that, what we need to do, we need to change this old x and old y. So self dot old x should be equals to event dot x, and self dot old y also should be equals to event dot y. That's it from this function. So now let's create another function. Let's create that reset function which we called in this button. Let's create that function. Define reset function here, and it is pretty simple function. What it will take this self, and it will also take an event. So event, and what it will do, it will set this old x and old y back to none. So everything just erases. This should be none, and self dot old y also should be none. Old y should be none. So these are two functions which we defined in this initial function. Now let's define our create widget function. So let me define it here. Let's define create widgets, and what it will take, this create widget function, it will take nothing because it's just called without any parameters. First of all, it will create a frame. Let me call it as control. So self dot control should be a frame should be at self dot master, that is considered as root. So self dot master, okay, should have a pad x. Let's give the pad x padding. Pad x, let me set it as 5. Should have a pad y, let me set it as also 5. And this should have a label. So after that we'll define a label here, label, and label where, label to self.controls, this control, and should have a text, let's say, and let's say text should be pen width. So we'll be defining this left label, that is for the pen width, and let me give it as font, let me set it as Arial 18. I'm using Arial 18, you are free to use your own. Let me set Arial and 18, and let me define its grid. So right away from here, dot grid, let me set row as 0 and column 2 as 0. Okay, let's hit save. After this, let me create a slider for the pen width. So let me create the slider. For that we'll be using TTK. So TTK scale, let me create slider, let me call that self dot slider from TTK dot its scale and to where, to controls. So self dot control, and range should be from 5 to, let me say, 100. Okay, and should have a command. This slider should have a command. Let's leave it blank right now because we don't have any function for that command. And should it be oriented horizontally, it shouldn't be as vertically. So orient should be horizontal. And after that, let me, when I'll give the command, the function, it will return the pen width. So let me set this slider to the pen width. So self dot slider should be set to self dot pen width. Okay, initially should be at 5, but as soon I change that, it should be set to that. And let me give it a grid. So self dot grid, let me say it as, self dot slider dot grid, let me set it as in the row 0, of course in the same row but not in the same column. Let me give it column 1, and let me give inner padding. So I pad x should be, let's say 30, let's say it as 30. And now let me packing it towards the left. So self dot slider dot pack, and pack to where? Pack to left. So how could see that slide should be at left. That's it from this slider. Now what we're saying, what we'll be designing our canvas. Remember that C where we were using here, C create, C bind. We'll be defining that C here. So self dot C should be the canvas to where? Canvas to the master, of course. So self dot master should have a width. Let me give it as 500. Should have a height also. Height. Let me give it to 500 too. And should have a background color. So let me set the background color as self dot color background, which we define in initial functions, color background here. After that, let me pack it to the right. So self dot C dot pack it to where? Pack it should be first fill. So fill it with both and expand should be true. Okay, so this is the whole canvas in which all the things will be defined. So now let's define the menu that will help us to select the all the options, like changing the brush color, changing the background color, or exiting, or just removing everything from the paint background. So let me define that menu. Menu should be menu. Let me define in this function, and this menu should be defined as self.master. Okay, and after that self.master.config menu, and which menu we should config? This menu, this one. So let me menu, and here also menu. Let's hit save. Now we want two types of menu, that is color menu and another option menu. And which type of menu we want? We want a file menu. So first define the file menu. File menu should be menu, and menu from where? From this small menu. And let me define first type of menu, that is color menu. Let me define it, the same menu we are using. Okay, and let me add some things. Let me add first of all cascade. Cascade is something, you could say, a area in which label and menus options should be defined. Let me name that cascade as, let me give the label to that cascade. Label to that cascade. Let me name it as colors. Okay, and menu should be color menu. Okay, and let me add the command to this menu. So menu, not menu, it should be color menu. We are adding command to this color menu. Okay, so color menu should add a command. Okay, command should have a label. First of all, let's say brush color. Okay, and this brush color should have a command that is already being defined, that is self dot. It is not defined right now. Will be defined this function, that is change foreground, because we'll be changing this background color in this change foreground function. So let me pass this function right away, and we'll be seeing this function. Okay, and after that what we need to do, we need to add one more command for the background color. So let's copy this one. Control C, let me paste it here. Control V, let me change this should be as background color, and function should be change background, so change BG. Okay, after that let's hit save. So we are done with our color menu. Now we'll be dealing with our option menu. So let me create that option menu. Option menu should also be the same menu type. Option menu should be the menu. A menu which type? Menu small menu type, and it should have first of all the cascade. So let me copy these 3 lines. Control C, let me paste it here. Let me leave it let me change it as options. Okay, let me change it as option menu. Label should be, let's say anything, let's say clear canvas. Command should be different. Okay, I'll pass the command once I'll define that command. Let's leave it blank right now. Let's leave it blank. Let me change it as option menu, and let me change this. Let me change it to be exit. So exit command is already defined. We'll be using our already defined function in the Python. So what we'll be using destroy function that will destroy the window. Self.master.destroy. So let's call that here. So it should destroy that window once we click exit button. Now let's define this change background, change foreground color, and let's define the command for this slider function. So we'll be defining 3 functions for the changing foreground colors, changing background color, and also for changing the slider value. And also we'll be defining one function for clearing the canvas. So total 4 function we need to define. Let's define it here, where we already defined some of the functions. Let me call first, let me define change width function for the slider. What it will take a self, and of course if it is changing with the event, so it will also accept the event. So what we need to do, we need to change the pen width to the event. So what value is being passed through the event, let's set that pen width to that value. That's it from this function. Let's pass this function as a command here. Let's pass it here, self dot, what is the change width, that is change w. Let's pass it here. Okay, after that we'll be defining this clear button, so I'll define a function named as clear. Let me define it here, clear. It will clear the canvas, it will accept nothing, okay, rather than self, because it should accept self. And what we need to do, we need to self.c. C is our canvas actually, so c.delete, and delete what? Delete everything in that canvas. So we are done with this function also. Let's pass it as command here, self.clear. Now our 2 functions are left, this change foreground and change background. Let's define this right away. Let me first define change background function, and what it will accept, of course, self. Okay, so what it will do, it will change the background. So how it will change the backgrounds, it will call this color background function variable, color bg, and from the color chooser it will ask the color user color, and it will set that color. So color should be equals to self dot color background. So it will set to that color, and once it self to that color, it should also set the canvas to that color. So self dot c, and which property of c, that is background property of c, should be set to this color background. So self dot color background. Once we hit save, now let's define our foreground function, def change fg. Let's define that, and it will also accept self here. And after that, it's very easy, self dot, just like this one, self dot color foreground should be changed it is similar to previous one, self dot color foreground should be equals to color chooser once again, that ask color once again, and color should be equals to the user chooses, and it should be set as self color, self dot color foreground should be set to that. And also we'll be using first index, so let's give the index also. Let me give it as first index, so first here and first here too. Let's hit save. Let's see if it works. Let's run our program, Python test.py. Okay, there is an invalid syntax. Let me say where is invalid. Okay, this is from, not frm. Let's hit save. Let's run it once again. So let's run our program once again. Hope it should work this time. Yes, it works. Okay, Let me see if I could draw something. Yes, I could draw. I could also change the pen width. Yes, I could change that. Colors, I could change the brush color. Yes, I could do that too. Background color, let me set it to this. Yes, and from options, clear canvas, of course it is working, and from exit, yes, it is working fine. So that's it from this video. Hope you like this video. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.